Good morning. It is spring equinox. Yes, that's right. I get those two backwards sometimes. My name is Marty Forrest. My website is Hello Extraordinary Life. You can check that out. There's a free offer for steps to reprogramming your negative self-talk. I also offer a mentor course that runs for and I said, well, it really goes when it fits in my schedule. And so I'm right in the middle of one now, but that might be something that you're interested in the future. You can check that out and see if it's a good fit. I offer private one-on-one coaching also for those that aren't interested in group coaching and want to go deeper and want to get through this thing that we do to ourselves, this negative self-talk and this thing that blocks us from really loving ourselves. Today, having said that, we are talking about how our beliefs create our process, and our process meaning how we walk through life, how we walk through our feelings and our emotions, grief, whatever that process is for you. We all have our way of doing that and what we've been taught over the years since conception and birth. What we were taught is how we go through it. And this started for me out of a grief process. And I started reading a different book about recovery, grief recovery, which I found the title just interesting, that it's a grief recovery, because often we think that we don't recover. But it talks about any loss. It can be any loss, anything that we have lost or maybe given away. But loss in terms of maybe a job or divorce, empty nest. Maybe our children have moved out of our house, gone off to the military. Maybe we're moving out of our hometown. That was me leaving Modesto and really fully planting my roots here where I live now. I know another friend who's leaving April the 1st to move off from here to Arizona. So there's all kinds of loss. It's not just a physical, someone died and left their physical body. There's all kinds of loss, and this is the process I'm talking about today. Is how do we navigate through that? How did our beliefs bring us to where we are today? And many of the things that I was taught were children are seen and not heard. If you're going to cry, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Those are two big ones. I remember my dad telling a story about he spanked me when I was 9 months old for crying for no damn good reason. So there's a lot. Those are all losses of how I deal in my emotions and how I function with them. And there are many messages that we've gotten, sometimes spoken and sometimes not spoken. I'm at a meeting on Monday, a network meeting, and I'm talking about this loss, and I didn't know how hard it would hit me and how emotional it would be for me, because I'm actually doing it, actually walking through it. And I got emotional in the meeting, and there were probably 15 to 20 people there. And the person who was leading the meeting, when I got emotional and got weepy, said, "Oh, and you just got right back on that horse and kept going." And I said, "Yes, I did." And I just cued into that, and I went, where did that come from? First of all, I agreed with him. Second of all, he actually said it, which just totally dismissed that me having an emotional moment in public. Sometimes maybe it's one-on-one. It's not always just a public thing. Sometimes when we are having a conversation with someone and we get emotional, they're not comfortable with that. So they do whatever they do to themselves to us. And we do the same. So I agreed with him. I acquiesced and said, "Oh, yes, I did. I got back up on that horse. I'm showing up." And that's what I did when I came home. I just started doing whatever was on my calendar, and by day 2 or 3, I'm wiped out, and I can't figure out why. Well, that's because I started just doing and not honoring that process. There was a place that I just kept going because my calendar's full and I have things to do and I need to work and all these things I'm telling myself, because that's what we do. We just get back on the horse. Some of the other things that have been said were, like, get a hold of yourself. Oh, it's okay. Somebody said to me when my dad died, well, at least you had him for that long. I only had my dad for however old they were when he died, which was probably a teenager. Ouch. That was really painful that my grief was minimized because I had him for so much longer, and I should be okay with that, and I should be good with that. So there's all kinds of things that our parents do because that's what they were taught. It's not because there's something wrong. It's because that's what they were taught, and that's what they know to teach us. That's what our culture does. Suck it up, buttercup. Keep going. Keep plowing through. Keep showing up. Keep busy. Distract yourself. Don't deal. And then what? Then what happens? It comes out sideways. It comes out, for me, it comes out in anger. For others, it comes out in depression. Some people mask it with humor. Some people get sick. Some people, when something else happens, they just shove it down a little further, and it comes out in some other way. Or they go into this deep depression because they didn't deal with any of the grief when life has happened. So it shows up in a myriad of ways, all because of how we've been taught. What do we do with all that? We've been taught these certain ways. We've done it this way for our life. This is just how it is, right? Which now has closed off the door. When I say this is just how it is, I've just closed the door to any kind of growth or to making it any different. And I choose the word different rather than change because I'm doing something different, which creates change. But the word change has a whole big other charge to it because of what we make it mean. So let's just do something different. Let's take a different action and maybe get curious about why I have these beliefs, why I deal this way, why I dishonor myself in the process of my emotions. Why do I think it's not okay to have them or feel them? Or why do I think it's okay to have them and feel them, but maybe not in public? It's rare that you ever see anyone cry in public because that's not acceptable. Anger is usually acceptable, even though we look at it with judgment. But that's okay because, people get angry and they have outbursts. But when someone gets emotional and has a feeling and has a depth to it, people don't want to talk about it, or they minimize it because they're not comfortable with it, and they're not comfortable with their themselves either. And that's the thing to remember is when somebody's doing that to me, I get mad. I do. I get really angry about it. I'm like, don't do that to me. Just because that's what you do to you, don't do it to me. And really, there's just a place of it's mine. I get to be responsible for it. And maybe I find the safe places to express that. And if I'm crying in public because my dad just died, then people just kind of go away. They go, not away, they go around. They go around. They don't even ask me if I'm okay. They just go around. Which is, to me, I find that's even easier than them saying something to tell me my feelings are not okay. So let's just look at how do we do this different? Given we've been taught, generally speaking, that they're not okay, that our emotions in public or in general, we must do this alone. If you're going to cry, go to your room and cry. Maybe that was something that was said. Maybe it was, if you're going to be upset, go to your room, because what's the message? It's not okay to be upset. You must go do this by yourself. How do we navigate that today? those messages that we've been taught all these years that our culture still perpetuates. Our families often still do that. I was reading something about we are the generation. Those of us that are here, those of us that listen to these calls, those of us that do the course with me, that get into this coaching with me, we're the generation that are making the change. We're stopping that cycle. We're changing the cycle. There's my word, change. We're making it different. We're breaking the chain of that generational abuse, emotional dysfunction. If I fully know and feel in my heart, if we are here doing this, listening to this, taking any action on this, that we are the generation that changes it. And there's usually one in every family that gets to be that. So we are it. So how do we make this different? What can we do to choose differently to feel, first of all, to feel what we feel, and then to honor that feeling? My MO, as many of us, is to cut and run. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to deal with it. Let me just go do my thing. Let me just keep living my life as if it's the same, and nothing's changed. Well, my whole life, I lived in Modesto until 6 years ago when I moved to Lincoln, which is a little over 100 miles. And I was still driving back there for 6 years, every month, every 4 weeks, going back to work. That's a big change. It's a big ending. My life is different. I had no idea how intense that would be. I made a choice to actually feel it, share it with my clients, share some memories with my clients and friends. They're friends now. They moved beyond clients at some point. And acknowledge this. That's a big part of it. We acknowledge this. This is the ending of how our relationship has been. It's not the ending of our relationship. So the willingness and the courage to feel it, no matter how uncomfortable. To acknowledge it, no matter how uncomfortable or how awkward. That gets easier. But it's often, almost always, 100% of the time, it's not familiar, so it's really uncomfortable when we start doing that. And then we get comfortable being uncomfortable until it's comfortable. Kind of an oxymoron, but it's that paradox of our life is we don't want to feel it because it's uncomfortable, and the only way to feel it is to be uncomfortable. And then how do we get to that place of being willing? Being willing. Sometimes it's just being willing. I'm willing. And then I'm willing to share it with someone, or I'm willing to let someone know that I want to run. You know, what's my MO? What's my normal behavior? I tell myself. And I tell that to someone who's safe, someone who I trust. So they can simply acknowledge it for me or just listen to me. Say, oh, I hear you. I understand, whatever that is. I say it's simple instruction, not easy. It's not usually very easy. So we take baby steps, and we do them incrementally. I can't go from a 0 to 10. I can go from 0 to 1, maybe 2, on the scale of emotions or higher vibration or love. But when I'm in that grief, the next step up for me is just to simply acknowledge it. So I'm grieving and I'm sad. My heart's broken. That's it. And when I can acknowledge it and say it out loud, it loses some of the power I give it and generate inside of me by saying it out loud, because now someone else has heard it. And I say it like it's just, oh, let's just go do this, but it's not always very easy. Sometimes it's easier to tell a stranger. I think the important part is to get it out of me and to say it out loud. I may never see that person again, but I've now said it out loud, so I don't have to carry it around so deeply in me and keep giving it the same energy and the same thoughts, because now I've given a voice. And as with anything, it's practice. I had a conversation with someone yesterday who thought she had offended me, and she called me to make amends and apologize. And I said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, I did this thing," and she's just really being hard on herself. By the end of the conversation, she's like, "Oh my God, I feel so much better," because she's given voice to all this stuff that she lets roll around in her head. And we all do that. We all do that at some point, until we learn and practice that speaking it helps it to move, helps the energy move out of us, and helps it to start to shift. I think that's a lot. That was a lot of tools and a lot of stuff. I'm going to stop right there. And ask you what are you getting from that? What are you taking away from that?
Well, definitely the importance of acknowledging our feelings as we go along. Because as you were talking about the closure you were doing with your clients, it reminded me of when I was in Polly's group. One of the stipulations to be in the group, or actually one of the stipulations to be able to come back to the group if we so chose to do that, was that we had to do closure. We had to do closure with the people that were in the group, which of course meant feeling the feelings of walking out of the group, which, depending upon how long anybody might have been in the group, could have been more or less, painful. But that was really clear for me, because that was an MO of mine, where I would, especially with like the men in my life back then, things would get uncomfortable, and rather than feeling the feelings or talking about it, I'd be gone, shut the door. And the only thing that happened with that is, it would show up again in the next relationship, and I'd do the same thing. So, I've learned that doesn't work, and that I really do have to, feel the feelings, be aware of, and be honest. And I'll be honest, I'm not always really good at that, but I've gotten better at being able to do that. So,
yes. There's a place of also taking an examination of our beliefs and where they came from, and are they mine?
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was flashing on that. I'm like, we often just take them on because that's what we've been taught, and it's important in this acknowledgement and being willing is to examine them. Where did they come from? Are they even my beliefs, or was I just taught these beliefs? Do they work for me? Are they effective for me? And if they're not, then what do I do different? How do I change them? Sometimes it can just be the exact opposite.
Right.
If I'm to be seen and not heard, then I'm going to be seen and heard. Right? Let me just shift that around.
Right.
And find ways to be appropriate in that. And if you're going to cry, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Well, I'm not usually crying for no reason. Right? So maybe looking at, though, I have a reason to cry, and maybe it's looking at why am I crying? Yeah. What am I crying about? instead of just taking on the belief, and this is just how it is. And somebody has said that she said it in a way of not saying it, but this is just how I am. This is just how my brain works. And I hear that, and it's an automatic shutdown of I'm not willing to look and I'm not willing to grow because this is just how I am. And that's what happens when we in these beliefs. Like, this is just how I am. I've now eliminated all of those places that I could go to examine my beliefs.
Right.
And why I'm this way, and how can it be different? Are there ways I can make it different? Maybe there aren't. But if there are, how can I embrace those and move toward those?
Right. Yeah, because I've heard, I definitely heard, if you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. That was definitely a mom comment. And
yes.
while I didn't so much hear the words, you should, kids should be seen and not heard. My mom told me, especially with my grandmother, that was her MO. Kids should be not. So as a kid, I spent a lot of time out in the backyard by myself because it was just simpler. Because I didn't know what to say. And usually if I said something, it wasn't accepted. And a lot of that was not safe to express feelings around my mom because I never knew how she was going to accept those. So, yeah, a lot of those beliefs. I heard one time, though, which really helped me with beliefs, that a belief is just simply a thought we think over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
that kind of for me takes some of the impenetrableness about beliefs. It's kind of like, oh, okay. So there, if I begin to change my thinking about it, and like you said, just sitting down thinking, what's really going on behind all of this, then I can really begin to change those beliefs. Yeah.
Yes. If it's simply a thought we keep thinking, choose a new thought.
Yeah.
The thing I find in our brain is when we're like, I think of those wagon wheel ruts from the wagons that came across the country, and they still find them. And it's the same in our neural pathways in our brain, that when it gets triggered, because it's such a habit, it's easy to default to that.
Right.
So it really takes something to hold that new thought to create a new belief. Simple, but not easy always. But yes, I love that saying. Thank you. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. I will get the recording out. We stopped the recording.